Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Monday, April 25th. Over the last 7 days, we've seen precipitation across many areas of the Great Basin, but still some of the drier spots have been southern Nevada, even parts of central Idaho. Over the last 14 days, we've seen above normal precipitation over parts of southern Idaho into Wyoming and the higher terrain of far northern Utah and northern Nevada, and also into the Sierra. Still, some very dry spots over the last couple of weeks remain over southern and central Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and parts of southern Utah. Also, some drier spots over the last couple of weeks have been some of the higher terrain in central Idaho. New snowfall over the last 72 hours is shown here, with snowfall in the higher terrain of Wyoming into eastern Idaho and the higher terrain of Utah and eastern Nevada. With our most recent storm, we did have some snowfall push further south into the Great Basin into some of the higher terrain of southern Utah. The snow depth is shown on the right and is mainly tied to the higher elevations. Looking at our snow water equivalent, our snowpack, you can see we are still well below normal over the southern half of the Great Basin and are below normal further north, but obviously faring better across Idaho and Wyoming, and snowpack is around 70% of normal. Looking at our satellite loop from this morning, a ridge of high pressure still dominates the Great Basin, keeping warm and dry conditions across the region today. We do have an area of low pressure off the west coast, and that will move through this week and also bring subsequent areas of low pressure dropping into the Great Basin later this week and through the weekend. This will keep the weather generally unsettled, especially over the northern areas of the Great Basin. Looking at the weather pattern for later today, that ridge gets pushed a little bit further east, so we will see an increase in clouds and maybe some light shower activity up into Idaho, and also an increase in winds over the western half of the Great Basin, so we will see better dispersion in those areas as that system moves in. Underneath that ridge, we will see lighter winds and poor dispersion over the eastern half of the Great Basin today. You can see those winds increase a little bit today ahead of that system, but still only gusts in the 20s and generally 30s across western Nevada and the Sierra, and then up into western Idaho. Mixing heights will remain high across the Great Basin. As we move into Tuesday, that storm system pushes east across the northern Rockies, and we will continue to see breezy winds over parts of the Great Basin, along with showers and cloud cover, especially over the northern half of the region, with still drier conditions over southern areas, and generally good dispersion region-wide. We will see those winds pick up as that system moves through to our north. The strongest winds will be across Idaho into Wyoming, where we will see some gusts in the low 40s. Elsewhere across the Great Basin, generally gusts in the 30s to around 40 miles per hour, but again, fairly breezy across most areas of the Great Basin with high mixing heights. As we move into Wednesday, this first system moves off to the east. However, we have another trough of low pressure just off the west coast, so we will keep some breezy winds and maybe a break in the weather, and temperatures generally dropping to around normal by midweek. On Wednesday, the gusty winds will be pushed further east, generally gusts in the 20s and 30s over the eastern half of the region, and a little bit lighter winds in the lower elevations of western Nevada and western Idaho, but still breezy in the Sierra with generally high mixing heights. The forecast clearing index for Utah today, with that ridge overhead and moving across the area, generally lower clearing indices, especially in the lower elevations, but the winds in the upper elevations will keep clearing indices a little bit higher. And then as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday with those areas of low pressure passing by to the north, we will see increased winds and increased clearing indices region-wide. Forecast amounts of precipitation are generally light across the Great Basin. Some of the heavier amounts may occur in parts of central Idaho, but generally over the rest of the Great Basin, generally only light amounts of precipitation over northern areas and still very dry over the southern half of the region. As we move into Thursday, we do have another trough of low pressure moving into the north. So again, another round of some clouds and showers and gusty winds with generally good dispersion region-wide. That moves through on Friday. We do have a brief ridge of high pressure moving in later in the week, but then as we go into the weekend, we will see additional areas of low pressure move into the Pacific Northwest and brush the northern half of the Great Basin. So generally continued unsettled weather through the weekend, with temperatures dropping to probably around normal, maybe still staying a little bit above normal in the far south, and any shower activity would be confined to the northern areas of the Great Basin, but also gusty winds going through the weekend. And you can see the showers. This is just from Thursday morning through Saturday morning. Again, any shower activity will be over the northern third of the Great Basin, with only some of the heavier amounts in parts of central Idaho and Wyoming. But again, generally light precipitation with these events as these weaker areas of low pressure move through. The 8 to 14 day outlook taking us from May 2nd through the 8th shows generally warmer and drier conditions over the far eastern half of the Great Basin and still cooler and wetter conditions over the northern half of the region. So heading into May, we will still see these periods of low pressure moving across the area, giving us unsettled weather in the north and still breezy and warm conditions in the south. So again, we are looking at a fairly windy rest of April into the early part of May with these storm systems. That concludes our webcast. Check back on Thursday for the latest updates.